Boker Tov, everybody. Good morning. Hoping everyone had a beautiful Shabbos. If you're able to hear me, just give me a thumbs up. Okay, very good. Baruch Hashem. Sorry, just a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're going to the right place. For this morning's shir, I would most highly advise everyone, if you don't mind, to be in a place that's quiet. To try as much as you can to be in a place that's quiet. And before we go inside what we're going to be learning, to just imagine for a second that you're treated to like the greatest visual in the world. And maybe there's like, I don't know, elevator music or spa music, whatever you want to call it, on the side. Because what we're going to be doing today is really going into the heart of the Beit Hamikdash and its beauty. And before we go into the Beit Hamikdash itself, I want to talk a little bit about Yerushalayim. So there's a few things that I want to mention from the Gemara that'll hopefully help us understand, will hopefully help us understand how it could be that after all these thousands of years, you and I are living in a world where the lack of something is still so apparent, or you and I are living in a world where it hurts us that the lack of something is so unapparent. So let's go inside. Everyone knows how the Gemara says that 10 cubits of beauty came down into the world, and Yerushalayim got 9 of them, whatever that means, and 1 was for the rest of the world. That's how the Gemara says in Kiddushin. And what we want to understand today, what we're going to attempt to understand today, is what's the secret of this lost beauty of Yerushalayim? That we're missing so much, and or like we said, like we wish we missed so much. What did Yerushalayim look like? So, if we learned this text about 70, 80 years ago, we would have probably assumed that if we'd get back to Yerushalayim, it would look like the way we're about to describe it. Well, we're still coming back to Yerushalayim, and we're not too late. So let's go for the few more Gemaras to help us understand what this means. So please keep on, if you can, to close your eyes. If I had the perfect music, I would put it on now. Perfect backdrop, perfect soundtrack. But in the time of the beauty of Yerushalayim, there were certain special halachas, the Gemara in Baba Kama tells us, that pertain to living in Yerushalayim. The streets were very, very wide, and there was even an Isser, the prohibition, to build porches, to build mirpesot that would go out to the street and would make it hard for people that would come up to Aliyah LaRegel. Even the way we literally built was mamish very sensitive to the beauty of Yerushalayim. Anything that would bring up anything of pollution was usher. And also regarding garbage was also very delicately attended to. And every single day, the Gemara tells us that even though the marketplaces were filled, they were, the Gemara in Baba Metzia tells us that the marketplaces themselves were cleaned every single day. You also had to make sure that any agriculture that you were involved with would not, God forbid, bring a bad stench, a bad scent into Yerushalayim, because it had to smell clean. Obviously, you couldn't raise any pigs there, or chickens, or goose, anything that would bring a bad smell was asur. And those that came up to Yerushalayim, they could sleep wherever their heart desired. And it was an asur, it was absolutely forbidden to charge anyone that came up for Aliyah L'Regel to use sleeping arrangements, meaning if they slept in your home or they slept in a hostel that you owned, you were not allowed to charge them anything. And the Gemara goes on and explains to us that Mapa minhag gadol haya b'Yerushalayim. This is a Gemara in Baba Batra. It was a great minhag in Yerushalayim that there was mapa prusa al gabei hapetach. There was like a cloth, like a tablecloth, spread in the entrance to homes. Kol zman she'hamapa prusa orchim nichnasim. As long as that cloth was spread, guests would come in. And Rashi says over here that literally a person that would come to Yerushalayim, he saw that tablecloth spread, he knew, Gevalt, this is a place I can eat, this is a place I could sleep, and it's all good, and it's totally fine. And the Gemara in Yuma tells us that no one ever felt unwanted in Yerushalayim. Millions of Yidden would come to the Regel, they'd meet their friends from all over the world. And there, they would meet these open homes and open hearts. So much so that Chazal tell us that when it says, Yerushalayim habnuya ke'ir shechubra layachdav, what does that mean, ke'ir shechubra layachdav? Ke'ir shechubra layachdav means it was a city that made everyone feel like they're chaverim. Chaverim kol Yisrael, chubra layachdav. I came to Yerushalayim, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm part of something bigger than just me. You know, that's the dream community, the dream shul is when you walk into the shul and you say, yeah, that's right, I'm big, I'm part of something. I'm part of something that's bigger than just my own geschäft. And you can, to a certain extent, you could still feel that today at the Kotel. But imagine that on like Yerushalayim, the whole city. Now there was a minhag in Yerushalayim. It's an amazing thing. The Gemara tells us in Psachim. It's amazing. We found all these Gemaras that describe the beauty of Yerushalayim. The Gemara tells us in Psachim that there was a minhag that after Leil Seder, everyone would go up to the rooftops to say Hallel. And meaning you would eat the afikomen, everyone would together eat the afikomen on all the rooftops, and everyone would look at each other on the rooftops, Leil Seder. And what was amazing is that with all the traffic, and with all the coming together, and with all the millions of people concentrated in the same place, what was amazing is that there were no accidents, there was no altercations. It was simply a place where miracles would take place all the time, every single holiday. Avos de Rabbi Nassim tells us, Lo nizok adam b'Yerushalayim me'olam. No one ever got damaged in Yerushalayim, ever. No one slipped, no one fell, no one tripped, no one got hurt, and there were no fires in Yerushalayim. And the Gemara in Yuma tells us that the lo hizik nachash be'akrav b'Yerushalayim. Snakes and scorpions didn't do any damage either. This didn't only take place in Shalosh Regalim, it also took place every single day. Every single day. People that would live in Yerushalayim, they would hear a very loud voice and sound of music coming out of the Beis Hamikdash every single day. And every single morning, the Mishnah in Masachet Tamid tells us, there was this voice calling out that said, Kohanim, stand up for your work. Levim, start singing. Yisrael, be prepared for your avodah. You'd hear this all the time. You'd be living in Nachlaot, you'd be living in Shari Chesed, you'd be living in Rechavi, and you'd smell the Ktoret. It says so much, the Gemara says that in Yuma, that the Ktoret, this beautiful scent, filled the city so much, there was no need for anyone to use perfume or cologne or any of that any oils or anything like that. Like the Gemara in Sukkah tells us, "Misha lo ra'a Yerushalayim betif'arta, lo ra'a krach nechmad miyamav." If you didn't see Yerushalayim in its glory, you never saw a beautiful city. You never saw, mamish, just the city itself. So that was description of what it felt like to be a Toshav Yerushalayim, a citizen of Yerushalayim. But now, let's go even further. Let's go into the bliss and the beauty of the Beis Hamikdash. So we are going to be learning a few words this morning, continuing from last week. The Rav that we learned from last week, Rav Erez Moshe Doron. And in his beautiful way of explaining certain key things regarding the beauty of Yerushalayim, I want us to all look inside in the text that you have in front of you right now and see how he says this. This is so beautiful. It's so magnificently beautiful. Rav Erez says like this. After a person would prepare themselves and purify themselves, you'd walk into the place where you're allowed to be, in the Beis Hamikdash. Everyone would feel in the clearest manner the reality of Hashem and his miraculous hashgacha. Bebitul chukei hateva. Nature did not have to be nature. Ubikdusha hamiyuchedet v'hanedira ota mashre Hashem alamo. And what you would feel is this amazing sense and rare sense of holiness that Hashem would hover over his people. This is what you'd feel walking into the Beis Hamikdash. מן השמיים הייתה יורדת אש על המזבח החיצון ורובצת עליו כמין אריה. There'd be a fire coming down from heaven up onto the outer altar, and it would be crouching on it like a tiger. See, az kashemesh. The color of this fire would be powerfully yellow like the sun. And no water in the world could ever put it out. The cloud of smoke, the pillar of smoke which would go up from inside this area that would go straight up to Shamayim in a straight row, or in a straight line up to Shamayim. ועשן המערכה, the Gemara says, אפילו כל הרוחות שבעולם באות ונושבות אותו, אין מזיזין אותו ממקומו. This ashan that came from the מערכה, the smoke that would come from the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, the Gemara says, no wind in the world. There was no wind in the world that could put it out. Ulemala mikol zeh, but higher than all of this, Avodas HaKodesh Atzma, the actual avoda of holiness. Seder HaKorbanot, the sacrifices. Hakravat HaKtoret V'shar Avodot HaMikdash, the incense, and the other works that would be done in the Beis Hamikdash. Pa'alu be'ofen tmidi al kol nafshot Yisrael. They would constantly be connected and active in our souls. They elevated all of us to places we could have never imagined that we could ever reach. To what kind of a place did they take us to? And this is key over here. Lematzav shel behirut v'zakut hanefesh. It brought us to a place of clarity and refinement of the soul. We always say this. The place it brought us to was this place of, I knew what I wanted for myself and I felt clean enough to feel like I deserve it. I'm going to repeat that line. I knew what I wanted from myself and from my God, and I felt clean enough to ask for it and to deserve it. Shalva v'simcha bilti mukarot lanu. We had this serenity and happiness that we didn't know of right before we were in the Beis Hamikdash. V'toda'a ruchanit gvoha le'afli. And in general, the height of our spiritual awareness was something that is impossible for any of us to jot down in words. Literally, like the saying goes, you had to be there. The reason why I chose this piece is because from everything that I've ever seen written about, in terms of a description as to what was going on, not just in the level of the avodah of the Beis Hamikdash, but what would happen to us going inside the Beis Hamikdash, this to me is one of the clearest attempts to describe for you and I, oy mehayalanu, like when we're going to say on Tisha B'Av, oh, what we once had, that we're getting close over here. Now, one of the things that you and I have heard of quite often over the years is the following concept we're going to learn. One of the things that you and I hate when I say you and I because I assume everyone feels like me, but I think in this one it's pretty safe to say you and I. One of the things that we definitely struggle with quite often is this feeling of having a clean slate. Was my tshuva accepted? When I stand before you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, am I still carrying the shmutz of yesterday? And like Reb Shlomo Carlebach used to quote the Baal Shem Tov all the time, the following statement he would always say is that yesterday is usually our greatest slave driver. We don't let today be today. Sometimes we wake up in the morning, the struggle to get out of bed has nothing to do with today. It has to do with yesterday. It has to do with the day before yesterday. But it has very little to do with today. You could think about it in your own lives right now. How many of you woke up this morning with only today on your mind, not carrying anything from yesterday? Well, the reality that we lived with in the Beis Hamikdash, one of the greatest gifts we ever had was that we woke up in the morning and we actually were not holding on to yesterday. We were not holding on to yesterday. It's such an amazing thing. How could that be? How could it be that we were not holding on to yesterday? Well, the Gemara explains to us very clearly that we had the greatest gift in the world. And that gift was what's called, sorry about that, the greatest gift that we had was what we call over here the korban tamid. What was the korban tamid? This is a beautiful concept. So look back inside the text right now. Lolan Adam Birushalayim ubeyado avon. It's the next paragraph. Tamid hashachar mechaper al averot halayla, v'shel ben ha'arbaim mechaper al averot hayom. This is what the Yalkut, this is what the Midrash tells us, is that no one ever spent the night in Yerushalayim while they were holding on to any avon, to any transgression. Why? Because the korban tamid, the one that we gave in the morning, the korban kavod midei boker, would atone for the sins of the night, and the one that we brought at night would atone for the sins of the day. So you may ask, well, what about in between those two times? Well, the korban tamid always stayed on the altar. We were living in a state of constant cleanliness. We were living in a state, I want to say even guilt-free, but not like it's not a get out of jail for free card. It was a different state of living. Can you imagine how beautiful we'd become if we weren't always nervous that we didn't get our acts together or that we're carrying something that's so detrimental to our soul? Can you imagine what that's like, waking up in the morning and feeling clean, going to sleep at night and not worrying so much about, God, what do you think of me? What do I think of myself? a clean state. That's what the Medrash is telling us that would take place in the Beit Hamikdash. Again, lo lan adam b'Yerushalayim ubiyado avon. תמיד השחר מכפר על עבירות הלילה, ושל הארבעים מכפר על עבירות היום. You were always cared for. You always sensed that you're clean. And he continued, now he quotes Rabbi Nachman, וכמו שכותב רבי נחמן, ובזמן שבית המקדש היה קיים, היינו נקיים מעוונות. We were clean from transgressions. כמו שכתוב וכציזן ישעיהו הנביא, צדק ילין בה. Justice will lie in Yerushalayim. Not lie like sheker, but will lay down. פירוש רש"י, כי תמיד של שחר היה מכפר עבירות של לילה, ותמיד של בין הארבעים היה מכפר עבירות של יום. So therefore, Rabbi Nachman says, על כן אנו צריכים את בית המקדש, שיכפר עלינו בכל יום. ומעת שאשר חרב בית מקדשנו, אין אנו יכולים לנקות עצמנו מן העוונות, כי אין מי שיכפר בעדנו. So, Chevra, I want to talk about this last line a little bit outside of the text. To me, this is it. This is the key. This is what Rabbi Nachman is guiding us towards really inhaling deep down inside. What is the pain of living in a world without a Beis Hamikdash? The pain, but we'll also see later on, and the gift are one. And what's that? Did I have to have emunah when the Beis Hamikdash was around? If I was told that there's a korban that constantly atones for me all the time, how much did I actually have to believe in God? Today, what am I working on all the time? I'm working on strengthening my emunah that my tefillah is accepted, and that one day, eventually, I'll learn how to really rinse my neshama, clean myself. One day, but I'm basing it on a lot of hope. I'm basing it on a lot of faith that one day I'll get there. One day I'll get there. But in the time of the Beit Hamikdash, I mean, we have to kind of use our imagination in a very strong way. If emunah wasn't as much of a necessity as it is today, then what did I use that whole world of visualization and imagination? What did I use it for? What did I use it for? I used it for something probably so much bigger than whatever I could use it for now. I used it to insert into my being absolute bliss. I used it to feel safe and secure and calm in the beauty that I lived in. That's what I used it for. I used it in such a way I had everything available to me. Back then, you see, can you imagine today if I didn't have to worry so much, I didn't have to work so much on hopefully believing that everything's going to be okay and that I'm on the right path. In Yerushalayim, of the base of Yerushalayim, I knew there was a korban tamid that was always cleaning me from anything I had. So what I want to focus on is to just imagine, what do you think was waiting for a yid that had all this space to think about how lucky they are to be in a blissful state of being in the world. Please. Since then, pogroms, holocausts, piguim, stabbing, suicides, sinas chinam, divorces, lack of shalom bayis. We're living in a completely different state today. Completely different state. That's why it's almost unfathomable, like what it was like to actually be around in the time of the Beit Hamikdash. Because here, what the Yalkut, what the Midrash explains to us, is something that we could just dive in our hearts out to one day get back to. But for today, this is what I wanted to focus on. What else did I have left in me? What else was I able to connect to? So as long as I knew, okay, my guilt, my cleanliness, my spiritual cleanliness, that's taken care of. It leaves so much room for other creativity that we can't even imagine. But usually what we're saying is it brings a beautiful world of creativity. When you know there's a korban, there's a kohen, I'm taken care of. That's what it was like to live in the bliss and beauty of Yerushalayim. Tomorrow, Bezrat Hashem, we're going to try to continue this piece, and we'll understand, well, even though that is true and that's beautiful, what can we do with that today? So have a wonderful, beautiful day, everyone. Thank you for being with us. And we will continue tonight, 8:30, learning Rabbi Nachman. Have a wonderful day.